another Science Saturday. I'm Shannon from the Ingersoll Library, and today we are talking about composting. Does this blue bin look familiar to you? What are these used for? This is a recycling bin used to send your papers and plastics and glass products to the curb to be picked up to be recycled. What about this container? Do you recognize this one? What about something like this? These two containers are called composters. What does that even mean? We're going to dive into that today and find out what this cone can do. To start, what is composting? Composting is the natural process of recycling organic material, like food scraps, into a valuable fertilizer to put nutrients back into the soil. So rather than throwing your food scraps away, like apple peels or eggshells and cut up vegetables, instead of throwing those into the garbage and sending them to the landfill, you can compost them and turn them into nutrients for your soil to help plants grow. By composting food scraps and organic waste, we are reducing the amount of garbage we send to the landfill, which helps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, saves water, and helps reduce the loss of soil. Here are some fast facts on composting before we get started. Did you know $31 billion worth of food is wasted in Canada annually? And that 47% of this food waste comes from households? The average Canadian household spends $1,766 on food that is wasted every year, whether that food goes bad before it can be used or it is just thrown in the garbage. Organic materials, those that can be composted, make up over 1/3 of materials that are sent to landfills and over 50% of our total waste. Did you know that compost is the single most important ingredient for healthy and productive soil? Compost helps to enhance soil structure. We're losing an estimated 1% of our topsoil annually, and compost helps to reduce the need to water. By improving the soil structure, water is retained and available for plants longer. Composting is really cool. So let's explore how you use a cone like this, and I'm going to show you how you make a mini kitchen composter. There are many different types of composting. There are hot temperature composting that uses high temperatures to break down organic waste. There's bokashi composting and vermicomposting, which uses worms to break down the organic matter. We also have backyard composting, which is where the green cone and a backyard composting bin would come into play. You can purchase both of these from Oxford County, and you can find more information about those at www.wasteline.ca. With different types of composting comes different guidelines. So something that I can put in the green cone composter, I can't necessarily put it in the backyard bin. If you're going to start a composting adventure, make sure you read up on the type of composter that you have. For example, with a green cone, I can compost things like fruits and vegetables, food scraps, and I can even compost meat, dairy, and bones. With a backyard bin composter, you cannot put meat, dairy, and bones and things like that. So read up on the type of composter that you have before you start an adventure. So now that I have it apart, what do I do with this? So this is a green cone, and as you can see, I took off the top, and I'm left with this laundry basket. So to make the green cone work, this basket actually gets buried underground, so you wouldn't even see this part. So it has holes in the side, so all of the compost and organic matter can break down and those nutrients can go into the ground. And friendly worms and other bugs and insects can also help break down the waste. So the green cone has a lid that you can open when you throw your compost in it. The basket's buried underground. And from the green up is what you end up seeing. They also come with a kitchen caddy that you keep in your kitchen. So when you're cutting up your fruits and vegetables, you can throw the extra scraps in there. And then when you're ready to head outside, you just take your whole kitchen caddy and dump it into the cone. If you'd like to learn more about the green cone or composting in Oxford County, check out wasteline.ca. They have a really great video of how you install one of these and how you get the most use out of your composter. Now that we've learned a little bit about composters, we can make our very own mini kitchen composters using some household materials. I'm going to bury this in my yard another day, and let's try our mini kitchen composters. To make a mini kitchen composter, you need to start with 2 containers. I have a empty coffee can, and an empty 2-liter pop bottle. So the coffee can is going to be the outside of my composter, and the pop bottle is going to be the inside. You will also need a pair of scissors and something like an egg carton or a piece of paper. Mini kitchen composters are really cool because you can see the composting process. So with the green cone or one of those backyard bins, you may not always be able to see unless you look in and brave the smell to see what the compost looks like. But with a pop bottle, it's clear, so you will be able to see the compost. Before we build our own, I want to show you a mini kitchen composter that I started about a month ago. So I have my coffee can and the lid, but the lid is not on tight. There needs to be airflow into your composter. So the lid is just set on the edge. And then I have my clear pop container full of our compost layering. A nice close-up of our compost there. You can still see some eggshells and other of the organic material in there. You can also see the really dark stuff that looks like dirt. That is the compost. And then near the top, you can see the fresh compost that isn't as old and the egg cartons. So that carbon in there. When I started my kitchen compost, I didn't really know what to expect. I thought it would smell really bad. And honestly, it doesn't. If you get your ratio between your organic material or your greens, so your food scraps and things like that, if you get a good ratio between your organic scraps and your browns, your carbon, so egg cartons, shredded up pieces of paper, the dry ingredients, the right ratio between your greens and your browns helps to keep the smell down and helps that compost process going. So it doesn't really have a smell at all. It looks kind of gross, but it is really cool. So the longer you leave your compost, the better it's going to get. So it can take months to get a full compost going, especially if it's a kitchen composter or a backyard composter and not one that has like the high temperature or the extra vermiculture, so the extra added worms to help the process speed up. So basically, once you get your layering down, you just fill it and it breaks itself down and squishes down, and then you leave it and forget it. So to make our own version of this, we are going to use a coffee can, empty, and a 2-liter pop bottle. So my pop bottle, I can cut it off to match the rim. So remember I said that lid's not going to get pushed down tight, so it's okay if it's a little bit taller, but we can cut off the top carefully. These are what your scissors are for. Always be really careful with scissors, or ask an adult for help. So now that I've cut off the top of my pop bottle, almost the same height as my can, so that's perfect. Any extra plastic and what you've cut off goes in that blue recycling bin, and it can be recycled because plastic is not an organic material. So it's not something that came from nature that's going to break down and go back to nature. So we can recycle plastics. So we have our inside and our outside. So do you remember when I said that compost needs oxygen? So we need to poke some holes, again, very, very, very carefully into our pop bottle. So you might have seen it in my close-up. I have some holes poked in my pop bottle around the bottom. And you might think it's for drainage. There really isn't much liquid at all in this, but it's just for airflow. So we want the air to be able to get at that to help keep the mold away as well. Carefully poke some holes in your container. All right, our outside's ready, our inside's ready. Now what do? We need to fill it. Set your outside can aside. We'll come back to it. And let's learn about layering. All right, so layering your composter is a lot like layering a lasagna. So remember I said you need greens or nitrogen? So the greens are the organic materials. So we're going to use apple peels. That can also be coffee grounds, coffee filters, tea bags, crushed up eggshells, basically any organic material. If it came from the earth, it can go back to the earth. So we need greens, nitrogen, and browns. So that's carbon. So our browns are going to be are like papery materials. So we have an egg carton here, which we need to shred up. Browns can also be just shredded paper. It could be a napkin, shredded up into small pieces. Browns can also be things like wood chips and sawdust if you have a bigger composter. Remember I said always make sure to research the type of composter that you are using to get the best use out of it. So for a kitchen composter, we're probably gonna have browns like egg cartons, paper, paper towels, things like that. So to start, we need to shred up our egg carton into small pieces, and we're going to start with a layer of browns at the bottom. Okay, so we've shredded up a bunch of our egg carton into small pieces, and we need to start with a layer of browns. So we're gonna put some in the bottom and cover the whole bottom of our container. Having a thick layer of carbon at the bottom also helps with drainage. Carbon also helps to absorb extra moisture to keep mold down and help that composting process. So we want a fairly thick layer of carbon. The ratio for our compost lasagna layering is important. So you always, always, always have more carbon than you do nitrogen. So more browns than you have greens. So it says if you're looking to be technical about your ratio, it's about 12:1. So more browns than greens. Have our browns ready, and I'm going to take some of my apple slices, my apple peel. So I only put 4 pieces in because this is not a very big container. And then you layer. Browns, greens, browns, greens, browns, greens, browns. Always end with brown on top. And you repeat that process. You can, of course, compost apple cores in bigger pieces like that. In a really big composter that you have in your backyard, you can definitely throw a whole piece like that in. Because this is a mini kitchen composter, you can put this in there, but it is a large chunk for this size of container, and it's going to take a lot longer to break down. So you can put it in there if you want. All right, so layering. Browns, greens, browns on top. And that's it. So when I started my own mini kitchen compost, it looked just like this. And now it looks like this. Do you see the difference? As the compost breaks down, it becomes less in the container. So this amount will break down to about this. So I've refilled my composter maybe 4 or 5 times in the last month, and it has never gotten more than this container. So it is breaking itself down and getting smaller, and I just keep adding more on top. When it is full, you can dump it outside in your garden, or you can add it to a bigger composter like the green cone or the backyard bin that we talked about earlier. And that's it. That's how you make a mini kitchen composter. So now you take your inside and set it back inside your container. So this outer container doesn't have any holes in it or anything like that. It's to catch any liquids, or if there are any smells, you might need to add more browns, more carbon. But it's to catch anything like that and to stop like pets or people getting into it. And then all I do with mine is I loosely set the lid on top. I do not press it on. I want to make sure there's air in there. Mini kitchen composters are a great way to start a composting adventure. So make one of these in your own kitchen and then see how your composting journey goes. There are books in our Oxford County Library collection to help you on your composting journey, such as this book called Composting, Nature's Recyclers. We also have a Caillou book called The Magic of Composting, and others like the Complete Compost Gardening Guide, Green Gardening and Composting, and This Book Stinks. Find all of these titles and so many more in our catalog at www.ocl.net. Place a hold on those for curbside pickup. Thank you for joining me for another Science Saturday. Try your hand at your very own mini kitchen composter, or find more information about composting and Oxford County's green initiatives at www.wasteline.ca, and check out our catalog and everything going on with the Oxford County Libraries at www.ocl.net. Until next time!